When and how should parents talk to their kids about separation, and what are a good way for them to have the conversations with their children?
Well, there's certainly a good way of doing it and some not so good ways of doing it, right? The best way, the ideal, is going to be for the parents to be able to talk to the children together and to do it in a way that can reassure the children and can let them know that they're going to be taken care of, right? So what I suggest often is if you're going to talk to them, pick a time, prepare in advance. And I often encourage parents to maybe meet with a divorce coach or somebody beforehand just to kind of get their points clear. So if they've got it clear beforehand and they know the points they want to get across, it's going to be a lot more effective conversation. And then I encourage them to, formalize it a little bit. Like say, kids, we want to have a meeting. We're going to have a family meeting, move it into the living room or the more formal room and sit them down and then let them know that, mom and I or dad and I or mom and dad are separating. And then you give them an explanation as to why. It doesn't have to be a long and detailed explanation, but they need to have some sort of understanding. And within that, there's certain messages they really need to hear, which are, that you came from love. The love's still going to continue. The love between mom and dad is different than the love between a parent and a child, because often kids will think, if this love is changing, is the love that my parent has for me going to change? So we want to make sure that they understand that that's a very unique, special, one-of-a-kind kind of love. And so if you can't do that, because there's some families and some situations where you can't do that, where you can't be in the room together to tell them, then you do your best to give the same kind of messages and reassurances. What children really want to hear is that their parents are still going to be working together. They're still going to be their parents. They don't want to see themselves coming from a broken family. What we want to do is give them the message that the family's changing.
A quick interruption. Please take a moment to subscribe to my YouTube channel, as well as like, comment, and share on the videos. It supports the channel and allows me to be able to produce more content. What are certain things that should be left unsaid when having that conversation with your children?
That's a good question because, like I said, they need an explanation as to why they need an understanding. But it can be things like, we just don't communicate well anymore, or we're like pieces in a puzzle that just don't fit together anymore. But the things they don't need to hear are all the details. They don't need to hear disparaging remarks about each parent. They don't need to hear the frustration and anger between the parents. I always think you brought these kids into the world, right? You owe it to them, is my belief, to try to do this as best you can.
And is it safe to say that you also shouldn't bring the conversation into whether there was infidelities that led to the divorce?
Yes, we don't want to go into a blame. And even the one party might really want that to be exposed because they feel the other party is responsible for, breaking up the family. That isn't going to help the children. You have to think about the children first. Now, in saying that, there are certain times, if there has been an infidelity, that there are appropriate ways to discuss it. It's a tough one. It's tricky, but it can be done. But that initial conversation is not the time to do it. That's something I would really encourage people to have some support around. Because in this world, their information moves so quickly. And if there has been an infidelity, often the children will hear about it from elsewhere. So if you think your children are going to hear, whether you are the party that, has engaged in the infidelity or the one that feels, wounded and hurt from the infidelity, sometimes then it's important to talk to your kids about it. And there's ways to do that. One of the things to be able to say in those moments is, a mistake was made. I made a mistake, right? I needed and should have finished this relationship before beginning another relationship. And it's hard for children to hear. But in the end, if they hear it from their parent done in a child-sensitive and caring way, it can be better than hearing it from the neighbor or the neighbor's kids.
Okay, that's really good to know.
Yeah.
Do children need different approaches based on their age or their stage of life?
They need, the messaging is similar, but it comes in different packages, right? And we really need to look at what is age appropriate. And what a 6-year-old needs to hear is a lot different than what a 16-year-old needs to hear. A 16-year-old is going to want more facts and they're going to want more concrete information. A 6-year-old is going to want a lot of reassurance, that they're still going to be safe, that their world, although some parts of it are changing, other parts aren't. In the end, though, no matter the age, they're going to want to know how it affects them. How is my life changing? Am I going to be going to the same school? Am I going to be living in the same home? What can I expect?